Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Urbana City Council. It's Monday, August 28th, 2023. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Here.
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Ms. Hersey,
Here.
Ms. Colasetti,
Here.
Ms. Bishop, Ms. Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. I believe Ms. Bishop is trying to attend by phone, so we'll try to get her connected. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from previous meetings, and these are April 24th, May 8th, and the special meeting on May 15th. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any substantial corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Next item, any additions to the agenda? We have any. Presentations and public input. There are no presentations scheduled for tonight. We are ready to take public input. Please step up to the microphone and state your name for the record.
My name is Matt Riggs. I'm here to speak on behalf of Alex Bragg and the Urbana Boulders liquor license. Just wanted to bring up a couple points. One, his type of establishment and co-use as a place that has an alcoholic license, a liquor license, may not be super common here, but a beer garden wasn't super common here either before we started a beer garden where, you know, families could come and consume alcohol responsibly. Those members of the family, of course, that are of age. My wife and I lived in Germany for several years, and we're actually members of the German Alpine Club and liked to go climbing back before we just worked all day every day. And it was very common. Actually, I don't think I remember a single climbing gym in Germany that didn't have a bar. I also can't ever remember an instance where anyone that I ever saw or climbed with would drink before climbing. It was the other way around. You'd go climbing, and then afterwards, you just had a workout, you had some adrenaline, you have a beer, it's all part of the experience. I never saw an issue there, just like I really never saw an issue in a beer garden. And I think we've proven that that type of model can work with very limited risk. Another thing I'd bring up is that Alex's business is older than mine. We just talked about it. I knew we opened right around the same time, but he opened about a half a year before we did, and he's run a successful, growing, thriving business here in Urbana, and I think that should buy him a lot of goodwill from the folks that run the city. And I guess coupled with that concept, I've known Alex for a long time, and I think he's a stand-up guy. And then, yeah, that last piece that I wanted to mention was, there was, in the article that I read, there was a concern about, you know, separating alcohol from you know, people that were not of age to consume alcohol. And, you know, I would just reiterate the fact that literally every liquor license in the city and in the world has that same, almost every. There's some places that are 21 and over to get in, but like 99%, possibly 100% of the liquor licenses in Urbana have, you know, at least during part of their opening hours, the ability for underage people to come in, and that's not really a concern. There are systems in place in licensed establishments, and that's maybe my last point I would make. We should be celebrating licensed establishments who have trained staff that are sober, are required by law to be so, that have dram shop insurance, major liability on the business as well as the individuals serving the alcohol. These are all controls and safety mechanisms in place in liquor licensed establishments that don't exist in unlicensed establishments. So I just kind of maybe wave the flag and represent liquor licensees, not only, you know, what he's trying to do and what we do, but every other liquor license in the city. You know, this is where we should be encouraging people to do fun and creative stuff, because there are legally mandated safeguards that are in place to ensure that risk is lowered to the lowest amount feasible Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the Urbana Council? Please state your name for the record.
Hello, I'm Adam Nichols, and I'm here for the stormwater issue that's up for vote tonight. So I'd like to start by just saying I support it, and I hope that it passes. And I really appreciate the call for input that the city put out for this. This is one of the few issues that I actually heard about and submitted written input to previously. I got a postcard is how they reached me. I'm not on Facebook or TikTok or whatever, so I don't get those kind of social media things. And I just thought it was really good that they were really trying to get out to people and, in my case, succeeded. So I also read about the dissenting views from other Urbana residents about taxes being
Welcome
too
to
high.
Ring Central Conferencing. Please enter your access code followed by the pound. This menu will repeat.
So, I saw the main concern from other Urbana residents was that the taxes are already too high, and why are we spending even more money on the wastewater system? And I see this as kind of just a publicly run utility. I mean, it's similar to water or recycling. So if residents want their basements to not be flooded and be able to get flood insurance, we need to have a working stormwater system. So one of the other things I'd like to put forward for the future would be we have tax credits for rain barrels and rain gardens and other types of people dealing with their own runoff. But the tax incentives only last a couple of years as opposed to the life that the thing is in service. So if you get a rain barrel and then immediately take it out of service, you're still getting that tax benefit even though you're contributing to the runoff. On the flip side, if you have that rain barrel for 10, 20 years, you get, a couple years of tax benefit from that. So it'd be nice to see the benefit match when the items are in service. And if you put in rain gardens, you could calculate with the upcoming change to charge by square footage instead of charging a flat fee, you could figure out how much of your hard surfaces are being abated so they're not going into the stormwater system, and then calculate the discount based on that. And the city has a history of doing group buys on things. So we have the solar program, the geothermal program. We got our composters and rain barrels through group buy. And I'd like to suggest investigating a group buy for rain gardens. So they can soak up most or all of the rain water that comes off your roof for a 50-year storm with the existing residential gutters. You don't need like oversized gutters or anything for something like that. The big effort is the design to make sure you have the right capacity for your runoff. And that's something that if we had a person who was dedicated to that running a program, they'd be able to do that for many residents fairly quickly and easily. They'll know all the inputs that you need in and can tell you exactly the volume of water that you need for your rain garden. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm told Chandra Bishop is waiting in line. If Barima can hear this, yeah. Does anyone else wish to address the Urbana City Council? Okay, we'll move on to council input and communications. Any announcement or news to share tonight? Okay. Reports of officers. We have a CAPER report. And this would be Braden Belcher from Grants Management.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Tonight I'll be providing a brief presentation on the Grants Management Division's Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, which I'll be referring to as the CAPER. So what is the CAPER? So the CAPER is a HUD requirement, and it's a report that we have to submit to HUD every year, 90 days after the end of our program year, which ends on June 30th. So the report is due every year on September 28th. The report provides a performance report on programs and accomplishments, and serves as an assessment of our performance throughout the year on our HUD-funded programs. So our programs that are funded through the Home Investment Partnership Program and the Community Development Block Grant Program. It's a useful tool because it allows us to assess the progress we've made toward the goals that we identified in our 2020 through 2024 consolidated plan, and also our annual plans that we submit every year. So this report is covering fiscal year 22-23, which runs July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, this past June 30th, 2023. So as you look through the report, you'll see some charts and some numbers that give percentages, again, talking about the progress we've made toward our goals. The information is pulled from two reporting periods. Again, our consolidated planning period, which runs 2020 through 2024, and then also our annual action planning periods, as I mentioned. So I'll walk through, it's a relatively long report, so I'll walk through some of the highlights, some of the points of interest that I'll be pointing out tonight. The data is pulled from IDIS, which is the information, it's a long acronym. It's our HUD reporting system where we input all of our accomplishment data and all of our financial reports. And we pull the report from there, and it again gives us the accomplishment data. I'll start by saying what's not in the report. So none of the ARPA funding that you all worked on this past year, none of that will be in here because again, that was not connected to HUD specifically. So again, this is just data from our two HUD programs, CDBG and the Home Investment Partnership. So the CR05 is the goals and outcomes screen. That you'll see in the report is the chart with the different percentages and the different categories of programs that we operate. You'll see there's two columns. The first column on that chart is the progress we've made toward our 5-year goals, our consolidated plan goals, and then the second two columns show our progress on those 1-year goals. So it kind of breaks it down that way. The CR10 is the racial and ethnic composition report, which shows the demographic information of the individuals that we're serving. The CR15 talks about the financial resources that we have received from HUD and also how they've been utilized. The CR20 is the affordable housing section, which talks about, again, kind of the need that we've identified in the community and how we've been using our funds to address those needs. And then attached at the end is the PR25 report, which is a financial summary of our community development block grant program. So again, everyone can see the funds we've received from HUD, how we've used them, and things of that nature. I knew I wrote it down somewhere. So IDIS is the Integrated Disbursement Information System that we utilize to report all of our financial data and our accomplishments to HUD. Again, that's where the CAPER is pulling the data from that you're seeing in the report. So the accomplishment data, again, whenever we complete a project or spend money on a project locally, we are gathering, how many people we're serving. Again, their demographic background when possible. It's not always possible to gather that type of data, but when we can, we gather that and input it into IDIS. The CAPER is pulling our financial information, so the funding draws that we submit to HUD for reimbursement for our HUD-funded programs is all reported in there as well. But the CAPER also gets data from some outside sources that are not part of the city. So, for example, you'll see toward the end of the report, there's a section on housing, on homelessness, specifically in Champaign County. That data is pulled from some of our stakeholders in the community who work directly as service providers to the homeless population. So we compile that data from those community partners and include it in the report as well. So for the 2022-2023 fiscal year, this is the breakdown of the funding that we received. The amount available includes our annual allocation that we receive from HUD. It also includes unexpended prior year funds as well as program income. So program income is any sort of money that we receive as a result of running our program. So for an example of program income would be the city owns 3 transitional housing units for individuals who have experienced homelessness. They pay a portion of their rent. That money comes to us. We have to report it to HUD as program income. And then you can also see the amount we expended in the 2022-2023 fiscal year. So just over $810,000 in CDBG and about $534,000 in home investment partnership funding. And again, I know this comes up often, but the home program is not just Urbana, it's Urbana-Champaign and unincorporated Champaign County. So that is reflected there. So I'll now talk about some of our accomplishments, some of the wonderful programs we've been able to support in the community, and some of the impact that we've been able to make. So I just grabbed some pictures here of some of the different types of programs that we support. So our Habitat home builds are supported through the home funding. We're able to support the Urbana Neighborhood Connection Center, as well as a variety of other nonprofits that support youth programming and different things like that in the community, and then also our home repair program as well. So I'll talk a little bit about those different accomplishments. So in the 2022-2023 fiscal year, we were able to complete 26 home repair programs for low-income Urbana residents. That included our accessibility modification program, our emergency repair program, and then also our senior repair program. Again, all targeted at low-income Urbana residents. Through our partnership with First Followers and Habitat for Humanity, we were able to construct 7 housing units for low-income families. The tenant-based rental program that we operate with a variety of stakeholders, including Regional Planning Commission and Courage Connection, supported 36 households. 150 households were impacted through our public infrastructure improvements that were funded with CDBG, and then 254 individuals received services through our Youth Services Grant Program in that fiscal year. So as you look at that CR05 report where those accomplishments are reported, I just wanted to have a little explanation as to a couple of the categories which report 0% progress, just because sometimes zeros can be kind of alarming. So I just wanted to explain that. So business assistance, you'll see that's listed in there. So business assistance is no longer, we offered it during the pandemic as part of the CDBG CV program. So that was a specific modification that HUD made to the CDBG program, which enabled us to support small businesses during the pandemic. Because the CDBG CV program it no longer exists, that business assistance program has been discontinued. Direct financial assistance to homeowners. So this specifically was for a down payment assistance program for low-income residents that wanted to buy a home in Urbana. We did operate this program in the prior fiscal year, 2021-2022. We didn't really see much interest in that program when we ran it. We ran it for a whole year, and we only got 2 people who applied, but they didn't want to buy homes in Urbana, so we were unable to help them with that. So for the 2022-2023 fiscal year, we decided to temporarily discontinue that program. The good news is if we see a need for down payment assistance come up in the future, with interest rates going up and things like that, we certainly can reintroduce that. It's just for the 2022-2023 fiscal year, we did not offer that program. And then also you'll notice in buildings demolished, that's part of the blight reduction goal that we have. You'll see that's listed at 0%. We didn't fund any housing demolitions just because we were prioritizing our code enforcement to other activities in the community. So we didn't complete any demolition projects in that fiscal year. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we have experienced over the fiscal year in implementing our programs. I think we're really proud of the progress we have made toward the goals that we've identified, but there have been some roadblocks that I'll just talk about briefly. You'll notice on the report that there's a section, we've identified as a goal the desire to build permanently affordable rental housing. That's a goal we have not been able to make progress on, and that's reflected in this report. There's a lot of reasons for that. We did pursue one low-income housing tax credit project, which would have been to build permanently affordable rental units in Urbana. Unfortunately, that low-income housing tax credit application was not successful, so we were unable to move forward with that developer. But it's something that we know we need to continue to pursue, because again, it's a huge need that we see. And every year when we do our public input and when we try to get citizen comment, people always say that they want to see more affordable rental. So we know that that's something that we need to keep working toward in the future. The city did, though, write 3 letters of support for other entities in the community that are building affordable rental housing, so that's very exciting. We have partnered with the Housing Authority specifically on some of the projects they have in the community. So we have been involved in different projects, but we haven't made a lot of progress in building something in Urbana. We've seen ongoing supply chain shortages also impact projects. This specifically relates to the construction of affordable housing. So Habitat and First Followers have been impacted. I know that Habitat specifically was delayed almost a year in some of their home builds just because they couldn't get garage doors, for example, for a very long time. So they weren't able to move forward as quickly as they wanted to. So thankfully, that's mostly those shortages have gotten a little bit better, but it's still a struggle that agencies are facing. Also, capacity of partner agencies. A lot of agencies have been experiencing, staffing shortages, things like that. We rely a lot on our partnerships and our partners in the community, and so we have seen, especially with social service providers, homeless service providers, they're struggling. There's a lot going on. There's a really big need, and oftentimes the resources and the staffing that they have just make it a little bit of a struggle to get things done quickly. Although still the work has been incredible, and we're very thankful for the partners that we do have. Another challenge, although it's kind of a good challenge, but a challenge nonetheless, is a lot of the additional money we've gotten into the community as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic, so specifically the home ARP funding. So that was a kind of an additional pot of $3 million that we got from HUD. Again, we're happy about it, but with every new pot of money, it's a lot of work, not just for us, but also on our partner agencies, and so that kind of, I think, has slowed down some of the progress. But again, we're very happy to be having those resources in our community to help us further our mission. So I'll talk a little bit now about who we serve. Again, you can see this in the different sections of the CAPER. So I'll start with income levels. So all HUD programs must serve low-income individuals. The way HUD determines low income is 80% or lower of the area median income for whatever area that you're in. So they do break it down, though. Here you see extremely low income, which for a family of 4 is defined as a family with an annual income of $29,000 or lower. For a low-income family of 4, the range is $30,000 a year to $48,000 a year. And for a moderate income family of 4, the income is $49,000 to $58,000 a year. So that kind of gives some context for these numbers. You can see based on this chart that the majority of the people that we're serving are in that extremely low income category. So again, for a family of 4, that would be a family making $29,000 or less a year. The racial breakdown, I'll first say that these categories are determined by HUD, and this is the chart that they give us. This was not my terminology. This is the template that they provide. You see the breakdown there. Again, we're not able to collect racial demographic data for all of our programs. So for example, if we do an infrastructure project, we can determine how many people we're serving, but we don't go house to house, surveying them. So we can't really know necessarily, but so these numbers are for the households that we're able to actually collect that information. And then individuals experiencing homelessness. Again, this part of the report is toward the end. But as you can see here, a total of 215 individuals were identified as homeless in Champaign County during the most recent point in time count, which happened back in January 2023. This was an increase of 78 individuals from the previous year. In 2022, the total was 137 individuals that were identified as homeless. We do estimate that this is an undercount. The point in time count is an imperfect tool that HUD uses to get an idea of what the homeless population is in different communities across the country. Again, it's probably an undercount, but I still think it's a good just point of reference for the situation locally. So the number of individuals that were unsheltered also increased from 2022 to 2023. It increased from 2 to 9 in 2023. Again, there are certainly more, but those were the individuals that were identified. 170 individuals who were homeless were in emergency shelters, 36 were in transitional housing programs, and then there were 32 individuals that were identified as chronically homeless, which an individual is considered chronically homeless if they're homeless for long periods of time and also have a comorbidity or some other, whether health issue, substance abuse issue, or something like that as well impacting them. And there were also 49 children who were identified as homeless in the 2023 point in time count. So again, you know, in this section specifically, in this area, we really rely a lot on our stakeholders in the community. There's a lot of agencies doing a lot of fantastic work. We've been able to fund a lot of those programs, which is amazing. And so we're really grateful for the people that we're able to rely on to help out individuals who are experiencing homelessness. So again, this report is kind of a look back on the previous year and what we've done. Looking forward, a couple of things that I'll mention. So again, we're currently in our 2020 through 2024 consolidated planning period. So that's coming to an end. The next 5-year plan will be 2025 to 2029. So the preparation of that plan, again, we'll be working collaboratively with our partners in Champaign and at the county to determine those long-term strategic goals. What are the areas that we want to focus on with this HUD funding? You know, what areas really need to be prioritized? So you'll definitely all be involved as well in that process in terms of public input, public comment on, you know, what needs to get done in the community. How can we invest these funds constructively to make an impact? The City of Urbana, as well as other community stakeholders, are also working on a countywide housing study, which will provide really useful data for us to get a more clear picture of what is the housing situation in Champaign County, where are the needs, who's getting left behind, and then that will help us identify how we can fill those gaps. And then again, ongoing community needs. We're always receptive to hearing from you or from members of the community in terms of what are the needs we're seeing. Again, we set those 5-year goals and then we set 1-year goals, but sometimes things come up. You know, the pandemic's a great example of that. So it's important for us to always be in tune with what people are experiencing on the ground, what are the needs in Urbana and in the community, and how can we use these funds to meet those needs. So that's my overview. The next thing I'll say is that the plan will be submitted on September 28th. We are in a 30-day public comment period for this plan. That was announced last Monday on the 21st. We posted it on social media. We posted it on the website. There are hard copies available at the city building. I also presented it to the city's Community Development Commission as well for the commission's comments. So all of you and also anyone in the community is welcome to write in, email us, call me on any sort of comments they have on our goals, our progress, anything that they see in the plan that they have questions about. They can certainly reach out. And again, they have that 30-day period to comment before we submit it to HUD. It doesn't need to be approved or anything by council. Again, this is just part of our public input process. So I welcome any sort of questions or comments that you all have about this.
Chris?
Thanks for the presentation, Braden. So it looks like you spent for this fiscal year of 2022 to 2023, half the CDBG funds and a third of the home funds. So what happens to that money that you haven't spent yet?
So the money we can roll over every year, so we're not losing anything. We do, as you probably all remember, back in the spring, we had a little bit of a timeliness issue with our CDBG money. You can roll over funding, but HUD still wants to see that you're not just sitting on, they want to see that you're using the money in the community. So they do keep an eye on that, but we're okay right now. We're not running into any timeliness issues. So those amounts kind of roll over from year to year, and we don't lose it, which is nice.
Okay, and the homeless people that you counted, is that for Champaign-Urbana, Champaign County, or what is that?
So the point in time count was countywide. It was primarily focused on the Champaign-Urbana kind of metropolitan built-up area. We relied a lot on agencies in Rantoul and other more remote communities to provide us information that they might have on individuals who are homeless in their communities. The physical count that we do on the night of the point in time count, we go out and survey people. That was primarily focused on Urbana and Champaign, but it is a countywide. It is a countywide count.
And the households and individuals that you serviced with the various programs, are those all Urbana residents, or is that?
So for the CDBG program, they all have to be Urbana residents. The Home Investment Partnership Program, because we're in a consortium with Champaign and the county, it's anyone in the county who is low income can be served, but the CDBG has to just be within the limits of Urbana.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Sharice.
Okay, I do have one question. Is this just about housing, or will the grants management department also be able to take advantage of this new legislation that Pritzker just signed regarding food deserts and monies to go toward easing, I guess, regulations or restrictions or whatever regarding grocery stores and so on and so forth?
That's definitely a possibility, specifically for the CDBG funding. We can that's a more flexible pot of funding that doesn't just have to be used for housing. It can be used for services, infrastructure, things like that. So there definitely could be some connection if there is a development or something built. We could consider that. The home funding specifically does need to be construction of housing. So that one's a little bit more restrictive, but the CDBG money, if definitely that could be a conversation in terms of how we can use that to fill gaps or to, to help make something like that happen.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mary Alice?
So am I remembering correctly, the CDBG funds, we get approximately $700,000 for Urbana every year? Is that right?
So that's the home program. We get about 700, 750 for the whole consortium. Our CDBG allocation is around 500,000, although for the 23-24 year, it was reduced to about $498,000. $498,000.
$1 million roughly.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to
exactly.
figure out in terms of the rollover, how much is rolling in every year versus how much is accumulating.
Yes, yeah.
So we're rolling over 1.1, about $1 million, a little bit more than $1 million.
Yeah, so what's reflected on this chart is what is basically our current, as of today, our current balance
Right.
of funds.
Right.
So whatever, come June of 2024, whatever is left over would then roll over to the next
And
year.
when do the funds come in, fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay. And then I appreciate you calling out the zero cells. I was wondering if I could call you to the opposite end.
Yeah, yes.
Because there
There
are
are
some
some opposite,
really
yes.
wild numbers here. So let's take tenant-based rental assistance for a moment here, which is the very first one. So the way I understood you said about this chart was that the first 3 are the 5-year goals and the last 3 are the 1-year goals for those columns. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So if we just look at the 1-year goals, then we're 360% over what we anticipated. Is that correct?
We anticipated serving 10 households. We served 36, so yes.
Okay, so we keep bumping up the 5-year goals because
Yes.
we're over-serving
Yes.
every time. Has there been any conversation about rethinking the allocation of these kind of things to put them more in balance in terms of what we're doing?
Well, I do think so. For example, tenant-based rental assistance, that's one of the reasons that with our home funding, we've really prioritized the TBRA program because we've seen a huge need for it, which I think kind of...
Welcome to Ring Central Conferencing. Please enter your access code followed by the pound. This menu will repeat.
So I think that's why we did shift that priority. I think what we'll need to do for that next 5-year plan is to really use this as kind of the template to say, hey, look, we're actually, there's a huge need, so that will kind of be reflected in there. But in terms of budgeting, these categories aren't necessarily tied to a specific amount of money. We have the flexibility to say, hey, we're estimating we're going to spend this much on tenant-based rental assistance.
Incorrect access code.
We
Please
actually spend
re-enter
twice
your
as much.
access code
That's
followed by the
okay
pound.
for us to do.
Is CDBG, is it 15% in services? Yeah?
Yes.
And the TBR falls into that?
No, so TBRA is a home program, so it's not subject to a
Okay,
cap.
all right, good. And then when do you think the housing study will be available?
I don't know. I would love it to be available as soon as possible. We're really hoping that, because next year we'll be starting that 5-year
Access
planning
code
process,
accepted.
And so we hope that it's completed by then
You
so
are
that
the
we can
only
use that
participant
data
in
in
this
our plan.
conference.
Because HUD does ask us to, should I stop talking and wait?
Keep going, we just got
Okay.
music going.
So when we do our annual plans or our consolidated plan, HUD requires us to have housing data. So that study will be really important for us to use in our plan to kind of show them what the local situation is, because they want to see that you're tying your funding decisions to a need, and you need to be able to show what that need is. So that's the hope.
So you had said that that plan is due on September 28th? Or is that when you're turning it in?
This CAPER,
No, oh, is it the CAPER?
the CAPER is due September 28th.
Okay, gotcha.
The next consolidated plan won't be due until June 30th, 2025. So we have
2025.
some time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Apologize for the disruption. Any other questions? Grace?
Thank you. Thanks so much for the presentation, Braden. I appreciate laying it out so clearly in this big document. Definitely appreciate the work of our city staff and all of our partners in this really important area. And I have just a few questions. One, I wanted to just retouch on ones that's been asked about the balance, because what I remembered from some of what seemed like kind of a lot of drama about this in the past was that it was $750,000 that we can roll over or we start having things deducted.
Yeah.
And it looks like we have $823,000 unspent funds in this year. Are you saying that's close enough, or are we going to lose some funding?
So our timeliness deadline was for the prior fiscal year. So we met that timeline, and then we got our new allocation of funding. So it was all okay because it was for our prior year amount. So we met the timeliness, and then we got our 23-24 allocation, which is now reflected in this 1.6 million amount. So we met the deadline last year. We anticipate we're going to meet it again this year. It's just the timeliness deadline they push toward the end of the fiscal year because they want to make sure as you're closing up your programs that you're on track. So so we met it. Our balance was under the cap, and then we got that additional allocation for our next year, which is why it's at that amount.
Great. Thank you so much for the more detailed explanation. Thank you. And then I was wondering about public infrastructure funds. Does that include some of the projects from the equals that were selected and paid with CDBG money?
I do believe that was part of it. So Tim's nodding his head yes. So we used it for our sidewalk improvements in targeted neighborhoods. So we took the ones from the equal that were in our low-income targeted neighborhoods and used the CBG funds for those. So yes, they were taken from that process.
Thank you. And then similar question, but maybe not for you, I don't know, but about the equals then, say 50,000 of the equals projects were paid with CDBG. Does that mean that there was $50,000 difference from the equals fund, or did we spend beyond that $2 million with the CDBG funds? And if you don't know off the top of your head, that's understandable too.
I think for the most part, what we did is anything that was CDBG eligible, we spent out of CDBG, and the CRNI funds that were funding the equal projects then went to fund other CRNI funds. I think that's how that balance worked out.
So they went to other projects, those funds.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And then last one was, did you say that there wasn't enough down payment, there wasn't enough interest in a down payment assistance program?
Yeah, so that was we ran that program in 2021, 2022. We marketed it. We worked with a lot of local, because the way it has to work is through the HUD regulations, is that residents would have to get referred to one of our banking partners that would then kind of work on them on the mortgage part of it. There are some community reinvestment bankers in the community that specifically work with low-income households and households of color to get them mortgages, to get them into a house. So we partnered with those bankers in the community, trying to do outreach, trying to market the program, get people interested in it. Like I said, we had two households that applied throughout the year, but again, neither of them wanted houses in Urbana, so we could only spend that money in Urbana, so we weren't able to actually move forward with that. The reason why we left it out of this plan was just because we wanted to move funds elsewhere and use it for things that we really knew that there was a huge need for. Again, we can always add that back in. So for our next year, if we hear from all of you or from the community that they really want that type of program, we can certainly run it again. It was just in 2021, 2022. I guess interest rates were really low, so people didn't have a hard time getting mortgages. So we just didn't have a lot of interest in it.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate sharing how, that it was advertised and you all worked on that. And I think maybe if there's anything else we can do to help.
Absolutely.
Also, we talked about some of those statewide programs that we offer, and it's just like,
Well, that's the other
how does the
thing is-
average person
yeah,
find out about
right.
this and utilize these
Yeah.
services?
Well, the other thing is that at that time because again, it was coming out right after COVID, there were a lot of statewide programs as well that were helping with down payment assistance. So I think there were also just a lot of resources at that time for individuals who wanted to buy a house. So again, as that changes, we're more than happy to reevaluate, in the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Braden. Next item is reports of standing committees. I don't believe there are any. We'll move on to reports from the Committee of the Whole. Grace.
On behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I would move for recommendation the consent agenda, including ordinance number 2023-08-028, an ordinance approving a major variance, front yard encroachment at 410 North Lincoln Avenue, ZBA 2023, major variance 02, Item B, ordinance number 2023-08-2029, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 24, Article 6, Urbana Public Television Commission, and Item C, resolution number 2023-08-078R, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement concerning geographic information system services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Grace, seconded by Mary Alice. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop, Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. We'll move on to the regular agenda.
On behalf of Committee of the Whole, I present motion for approval, ordinance number 2023-08-030, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 3, Section 3-43, increasing the number of Class A liquor licenses for Urbana Boulders LLC, DBA Urbana Boulders, 1502 and a half Cunningham Avenue, Urbana, Illinois.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Grace, seconded by Jaya. We've asked the owner and operator of Urbana Boulders to be here tonight to answer any questions you have, so come out Alex, come on up and have a seat in the front, and just make sure the button on the microphone is pushed. Just as a reminder, the liquor license they've applied for and that we're recommending is Class A for beer and wine consumption only on premises. So are there any questions for Mr. Bragg? Chris?
Thanks for doing all this, and great to hear that it's going well. Could you just address the whole climbing drunk fear that everybody has?
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't think we would has never kind of appeared to be a problem for us. I don't think we're not going to serve alcohol to anyone who will be then participating in climbing afterwards, and we have kind of safeguards and training in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. We'll be monitoring our clients. We have a good amount of staff at all times, and we have a pretty tight-knit community, so we know like who's here and who's climbing, and we have a video monitoring system, so we can watch like all corners of the gym. And like I said, we'll be stamping hands to make sure that no one can then sort of participate back in the climbing. But that's really not something people will want to do, or we participate a huge problem with. So that answer your question? Or?
It pretty much does. So it's what Matt said. It's basically you drink after you climb, basically.
Yeah, we're just kind of offering like a concession.
Yeah.
You're there with friends, and maybe you, instead of driving to Champaign to the Blind Pig, you stick around, sit on a picnic bench outside, and enjoy a beer with us. Right now, we do serve like kombucha and some other things on tap, that people participate in. So, yeah.
Sharice?
I wasn't here last week for this, but it just occurred to me, on my birthday, I went drinking and threw axes in Champaign.
That's
So
true.
therefore, I feel very confident that I had common enough sense not to, go all Buffy the Vampire Slayer on anybody. And I'm hoping that people that, attend this, and I'm sure they have just as much common sense to, that you would, that they won't drink and climb. So I wish you all the luck in the world.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I would remind folks also that just like any other liquor license holder in the city of Urbana, they have to be licensed by both the state and the local government. Their servers have to be BASSET trained. They have to be 21 years of age or older, and they will be getting a hand stamp to identify that they have consumed alcohol. So, and they're subject to inspections from the state or liquor control commissioners as well. Okay, oh, yes, go ahead, Grace.
I guess discussion, but it's already moved, so it's discussion.
If we're done asking questions? Okay, discussion then.
Great. Yeah, just my question's done. Just want to say, thank you for doing business in Urbana. I think it's a, great activity for people to be able to do. I think that this makes sense, and I appreciate you coming out and just clarifying all the safety issues for people who might not be as aware. I agree with Therese. That's what, mentioned last week. We have bars where people throw axes, and in our car society, a lot of people get home behind the wheel of a car afterwards, and the bars have to not overserve and take on a lot of liability with that. And so I think that climbing is not one of the most extreme things that falls into these kinds of activities. So I'm in favor of it and support, and I hope that this helps add to your business, and I appreciate the extra information. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I would remind folks also across the street in Lincoln Square, just a few years ago, there was a children's museum located where kombucha is now sold, and where the kombucha is now sold was a bar, so parents could go to the museum, have a glass of beer or wine while their children played as well. So this is not unprecedented. At any rate, thank you very much. Motion has been made and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes.
And lastly, on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I would move for approval, ordinance number 2023-08-031, an ordinance amending section 24-172 of the Urbana City Code and the schedule of fees pertaining to the stormwater utility fee.
Good evening. I have a few slides just to answer some
Can you
questions.
pull the microphone closer to you, please?
Of course. I have
Thank
a
you.
few slides to share to answer your questions from last week. So first, just to summarize what the meat of the ordinance is, we're asking for a rate increase for the stormwater utility fee to go up on January 1st of 2024 from $5.82 per month per ERU up to $8 per month. And we are asking for the rate structure to change as well, that the single-family residential and duplex properties be billed the same way as the non-residential parcels are currently billed. And the presentation last week gave our justification for why. But we had some outstanding questions, starting with, can we do this by January 1st, referring to the mapping of impervious areas. So I spoke with two companies that are doing this. They're mapping impervious surfaces for municipalities, other agencies that specifically for stormwater management. So one particular company gave us a quote and a timeline. We had several conversations and emails. They've done this for the city of Detroit and gave some great examples. So approximate cost is around $10,000. Which is roughly 0.5% of our current revenue for the program. Timeline, we can do this within 5 weeks of a contract starting with them. And I've laid out this timeline here in specifics of what would be done. So we'd get out an RFP as soon as this week, collect proposals from vendors. It's a service for a low-cost service, so we would put it out on the website for just a few days, so we'd get these proposals back, get a contract in place by late September. Then 5 weeks go by, we get our GIS deliverable completed by late October. Go through a few more weeks, buffer in here for quality control from city staff, and we'd also be doing quality control, QA/QC, with this company during that 4-week time frame to review, smaller deliverables. So we wouldn't just get one big package at the end. We work kind of side by side with them. And then any updates by the vendor if they're needed. We've got 3 weeks buffer in there to get to a deliverable to UCSD by November 20th. They have shared with us that they would need this by December 1st. So this again gives us a few more weeks or, buffer in there to get that to them. And then we'd have the final ERU adjustment with the new rate by January 1st. So just some more information about what these companies do, what this GIS mapping is. It's an artificial intelligence-based mapping technology. So they're using aerial imagery, satellite imagery, and street views to produce these high-definition vector maps to get these GIS maps. So they're high quality, very consistent. They guarantee over 95% accuracy, and they can deliver quickly because it's a combination of both manual inputs and automated factors in there, the artificial intelligence technology that I cannot fully explain, but that's why we pay a vendor to help us with this. So they work with providers of imagery to get the most recent maps available. So they have off-the-shelf availability using maps that, our county, that would match what we're getting from our county GIS consortium. So these would be, produced this year. So probably aerial imagery that was collected in spring of this year, similar to what the Champaign County GIS consortium is using. And then I've just provided a few sample images. So what this looks like, mapping these impervious areas. They can break it down into some pretty good granularity here, so very specific categories of impervious areas and pervious areas. So this is from Detroit, and on the right-hand side, you can see how they're very good at detecting changes in imagery. So going from 2020 to 2021, where they saw some buildings that were developed, their technology caught that, and they could, get this change in mapping done very quickly. And then a few more examples here. So to compare more to our highly tree-covered areas, there's some examples here from King County, Washington. So what this looks like on the right, with all the layers kind of put on top of each other without any transparency. You've got tree cover, it's like the green blobs. The buildings are in pink, other areas in different colors. But then they can get down to, you can see what each of these layers are kind of put on top of each other. So you're not getting these errors from tree cover like we were when we were trying to do this ourselves. So you can get these very accurate maps with their technology. Okay, another question that came up was, can we do this rate increase at a time other than January 1st? I think it was suggested that we ask about April to give us some buffer in getting these maps prepared so that we could have the rate change happen at the same time as the mapping. And basically, no, we cannot unless we change our intergovernmental agency agreement between UCSD and the city. That requires us to do these changes for the rate on January 1st. I also copied the text directly in this second bullet here, so bear with me, I'll just read it to you. The city may determine that adjustments are to be applied to the stormwater utility fees in accordance with its ordinance or policy. Additions of or changes to existing criteria will be forwarded to the district no more frequently than once a week. Change information shall include the parcel number, property address, ERU, and/or credit percentage. Changes will be incorporated into the stormwater calculation for the specified parcel and will apply to the next regularly generated bill. So we believe that this applies to these ERU adjustments. So as issues come up with residents, if they want to audit or have us check, review their changes, this is the process that is in place in our agreement. That we share these changes with UCSD no more than once per week, and they would add it to the next billing cycle. Okay, and then another question came up about what would our process be internally, like for city staff, how would we review any audits or requests for information? And this looks a little complicated here because I had to fit it on a PowerPoint slide, but basically it starts with a request and it always ends with keeping a record of the request. So there's a variety of ways we can get from point A to point B. We would review the impervious area on a parcel. So first of all, the request can come in likely through the website. We have channels there where we can get the request, we get their address. This may just be a matter of sharing information with the resident. They want to know what their impervious area is, why are they billed a certain amount. So this process could end very quickly with us simply sharing, what their map looks like. This takes a matter of minutes for our stormwater engineering technician to pull up that information and share it with a resident. So then we've got this decision tree to help us go navigate the process. Do they need more clarification? Yes, we continue with discussions. No, we can end it there and record the request. Following more discussions, are they requesting a map change? If no, then we can probably end the request there. We've just given them the information that they need. Yes, then we may need to do an inspection. So that may mean going out to their parcel and verifying that changes are made, or if we can tell from aerial imagery or mapping that a change is needed without an inspection, we can just go ahead and do that. And that would mean updating our map and sending that information to the resident, and then sharing it with UCSD to update their billing amount. Or we go out to the site and perform an inspection and we find that no changes are needed, then we provide a standard letter, template letter that shares that we found no change in impervious area and share what we did find. So this is similar to what we're already doing for commercial or non-residential properties. We would do something similar for residential as well. Then finally, so Peoria, I think I mentioned last week that they are doing billing in a similar way. They started in 2018. And, got some more information from how many appeals they are dealing with year to year. So initially, they received a lot. They got 5 to 10 appeals per day at the beginning. And that is due to them using an outdated map. So they used a map that was 3 years old in the beginning, a 2015 aerial map when they were in 2018. So I can see that having a lot of issues. But now they only receive appeals sporadically this year. They received 40 total last year for the entire year and 68 in 2021. So the second bullet was just me scaling that down to Urbana, our population versus Peoria's, our number of households, thinking worst case scenario for us, if we had a very inaccurate map, we would see about 2 to 3 appeals per day in the beginning and then about 20 annually. Just rough estimate, clearly. And then finally, there was a request to put out to the residents that what our final recommendation for a rate was, that $8 per month going up to $10.36 per month in 2028. So I shared a frequently asked questions sheet with everyone who responded to the survey or reached out to me directly earlier last week, and a brief update on what the proposed ordinance is. And I received 8 responses. 1 more came in right before this meeting. And they were 3 positive, 1 negative, and just 4 general feedback and questions. And then I received 1 more additional response from the postcard that was very supportive, of the $27 a month rate. And finally, just want to reiterate that city staff is prepared to have this GIS map layer of impervious areas ready by January 1st. And we are prepared to respond to resident inquiries and audit requests and continue our coordination with UCSD for ERU adjustments.
Thank you, Carmen. Any questions for Carmen? Okay, we'll start. Chris?
Again, maybe I'm making too big a deal out of this, but I guess I'm still hoping that somehow when we do that first billing at the $8 rate that we communicate, and 5 years from now, it'll only be $10.39 or $10.36. I mean, maybe provide that gradation so that nobody gets confused about 17 and 27 and all that stuff. So that's all I have.
Mary Alice and then Sharice.
So thanks for following up and getting some quotes for us so that we had a better understanding. You had made a mention in Peoria that they're using a 3-year-old map, which begs the question in terms of how frequently the impervious map needs to be regenerated. Are you thinking of doing that on a cadence of every year, or are you thinking of, what is the current thought?
So we could do that. We could, there's one of the companies that I spoke with that has these partnerships with impervious area map generators or aerial imagery providers. We can have a subscription with them and pay them for the next 2 years annually, and it'll be just a significant reduction in that cost. I think it's 30% reduction for years 2 and 3, or I'm sorry, 50% actually, 50% cost for years 2 and 3, they said. So that could be worth it, or we can try to maintain that mapping on our own. As we get notified of permit applications, like residents doing construction on their sites, then we would update our map accordingly as we see those changes being made. And then in conjunction with that, we have that 3-year update from the county consortium that would continually update the map. It wouldn't be annually, it'd be every 3 years, but.
So it sounds like you could do 3 years for 20,000. If you get 50% in year 2 and year 3, it's 20,000.
Yes.
Okay. And
I believe so. I mean, I don't have a proposal from them yet. This was just
no problem.
preliminary
Just rough
conversations
numbers.
and quotes.
Absolutely.
So yes, rough number. Yeah.
Rough number. And originally, when you were talking about this, we didn't quite have the timeline down. Were you thinking about doing this through CCGIS, or were you thinking about hiring this out?
Unsure. We were thinking either one. We hadn't made the decision last week.
Yeah, the aerial imagery, CCGISC, we all share a cost in getting aerial imagery updated every 3 years, of which the most recent stuff is kind of finishing post-processing right now. So we may be able to use that. We would still be outsourcing something to a company that actually has the algorithms through the AI to analyze that aerial imagery with the street views and other things like that. So to some regard, we're going to outsource something there. whether they're providing the aerial imagery through one of their partnerships or we're providing it from CCGISC. One of those two is true, but it kind of depends on the timeline because obviously we've got very time-sensitive stuff here. We expect that CCGISC is going to have their deliverable to all of the partner agencies within the next month. Well, I think by October sometime, but there's not like a hard and fast date on that where it may be that we can wait to a certain point in time, and then if that's not going to be finished, that we would just work with them to work with their partnership to get it finished so that we can make sure we hit that January 1.
The deadline is more, the January 1st deadline is for a change in the absolute rate, but not a change in the ERU. Is that the right acronym?
Yes, the way it's written now, that's correct, yeah.
So the ERUs, if we get, for example, if there's an updated map in October, we could go through and send an update on all those things. So we don't have to wait for January 1st. That's just the billing rate that we're doing. So there's two variables there, right?
Correct. The way it's written now, and that was kind of the stuff that we got from you guys last week, was you would really like to see the updated ERU counts go with the billing rate January 1. And I think we talked about it, and then talking to some of these, companies that provide this service, we think it's feasible to get that done. The way it's written right now, it doesn't hamstring us to do it on January 1st, although that's kind of what the interest of the council was last week when we spoke.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Therese?
No, the main question I have is regarding the GIS in the residential areas being done. And you said that you would be sending notices out to each resident. And what I kind of know is that in certain communities, the residents, the people might live there, but they don't own the property. So they're just renting. So I don't know if would it be, will those residents be responsible for the payment of those fees, or is it the owners that are responsible for the payment of those fees?
No, the residents are not responsible. It's the property owner. And when we sent out postcards to share the different rate structures that we came up with, the $8 up to $27 per month, we sent those to the tax billing addresses for all properties in Urbana. So that was only around 8,000 or so addresses we had in our list, rather than every single property.
Okay.
For notification of this change, we could do something similar, where we send it to the property owners so that we're not confusing renters that are not responsible for this directly.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Grace?
Thanks. Thank you so much for coming back with all this to us. I appreciate the consideration and some follow-up information. I am in support of the big picture end goal change here. And I'm in support of having that portion where we can split proportionately the residential unit. As you talked about, that's a more fair and equitable way to do it. And what I'm not okay with is how it's currently written, and why I voted no for it last week is, think about how to articulate it better, is because it disproportionately impacts people with smaller homes are going to be incorrectly paying more. And people with larger homes or impervious spaces are going to be incorrectly paying less. And that doesn't sit well with me. And I think I really appreciate this and that it is possible and showing that it is. And I'm down for that. If you say you can do it by January 1, but I would like it in more firm of a writing and commitment than what it's written here. It's just once the city establishes it, it's just the way it's written, we could just leave the public hanging, paying these fees that we know we want to do better for an unspecified amount of time. So some questions are, first, is there any reason why we have to change the city code now? Or is this what you're already proposing? Or this is your alternative?
I have an alternate version.
Sorry, I'll let you go first. Go ahead.
No,
Share your alternative.
Yeah, so I did not share with you the complete ordinance, but there is a version with this as the alternate language. So that would tie us to delivering this rate structure change at the same time as the rate increase.
Okay, because section D talks about the fraction of an ERU at 3,900 square feet or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was one ERU is the 3,100 square feet. So this would be billing everyone the same way.
Yeah,
based
that's
on
what
the
this
impervious
section,
area.
like D3, points to. That fraction of an ERU is what that's referencing, right?
Correct. It's that they're charged based on their impervious area. Yes.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then question 2, though, do we have to do this now? Like, why not wait until November, December when we have maybe a little more of an idea about if we're actually going to hit this January mark or not? Like, is there any reason why this has to be passed now?
I guess the one thing I would say is it tells us she wants to spend our time and effort on it. I mean, we're going to have, as you saw there, we're going to have 3 or 4 months worth of work ahead of us. So you telling us yes now says we're going to hammer down for the next few months trying to get this done so that we can hit that January 1 deadline. I guess to me, nothing changes between now and then from this. If you guys support it now, you would support it in 3 months, I would think, when we're done with our effort.
So you're confident enough to hit this? I just don't know if this is locking you into something that you're not certain if we're going to be able to achieve. So I guess it's kind of you have like, would you rather be locked into this and have this approved now?
I think we are
right?
confident is the answer.
Okay.
You know, Carmen and I have done it. We talked about a lot of stuff. She's done a lot. I've just listened and then tried to play devil's advocate to break it apart to see, you know, how would this break? And I think we're confident that we can get this done reasonably by January 1st, really by November 20th, because we have to have it done almost a month ahead of that time to notify UCSD so that they can then get the changes implemented so that January 1 hits and everything goes into effect.
And
It's mostly a logistical thing.
I want to add that having that additional time could help us look into issues like our resident brought up at the beginning of this meeting with the credits and incentives manual as well, because there would be some changes needed to that to go along with this rate structure change.
And so what did you say? What would give you more time or flexibility?
If we know that this is definitely happening, the rate structure is changing, you've approved it now, then this gives us time to prepare for all those changes in the next couple months, so we can revisit the credit and incentive manual and make sure it's up to date and matches this language.
Okay. And you showed us that bit of the IGA with the sanitary district, and I didn't see anything about January 1st. I don't know if that's what you were trying to show us or if that's in another part of the agreement.
I didn't copy that, but that's in the agreement,
Okay,
yes.
that's another
January
part that it's
1st
only
is in
January
there,
1st
yeah.
for the rate change. This is
Yep.
just for the ERU changes.
Right.
Okay. I guess my other question is procedurally, I don't remember how would we amend anything at this point? If I do as a mover,
We don't yet have a motion on the floor, so you'll move it. Did someone second it? I didn't hear it.
Well, I'll second if you
All
need a
right.
second.
So it's moved by Grace, seconded by Mary Alice. And then you'd have to just specify that you are moving the alternate language as proposed by Carmen, which is for section 14-7 and section 24-172D2.
I'd like to move the alternate version.
Since you're the original mover, I'll go ahead and make that motion to amend it, to use the language specified here, where one in quote, or in parentheses, ERU, each is struck, and as all other parcels are billed as described in section 24-172D3, beginning January 1, 2024, and continuing thereafter, unless and until amended by action of the city council.
Is there a second to that?
A second.
So, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. And then we'll vote on the original ordinance. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you.
And we have confidence that it will be done. I know. Thank you very much for the incredible amount of work put into this. Reports of special committees, there are none. We have one appointment And this is to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. BPAC is one of those commissions that has seats that are specified for certain representation from certain organizations or agencies. And in this case, the Urbana Park District is one of the government agencies that has a representative on BPAC. So this is for a term ending June 30th, 2026. And I recommend appointment of Keenan Portis. He's a 4-year resident of Champaign County, currently holds the position of park planner at the Urbana Park District. In this role, he's responsible for designing, developing, and managing aspects of Urbana's parks and recreational spaces. His goal is to create attractive, functional, sustainable outdoor environments that cater to the needs and preferences of the community. So he will, as I said, serve as the Urbana Park District representative on BPAC. His statement included the following, quote, "As a park planner, it's my duty to serve and assist in parks, open space, trails, natural resources, land use, and transportation planning. This includes modes of transportation like biking and walking. Through this committee, I could gain different perspectives on our current bicycle and walking transportation system and use this knowledge for our parks and trails. As a member, I can influence the development of bike lanes, trails, and other cycling infrastructure by providing valuable input to local authorities. Currently, I'm working on developing possible regulations for e-bikes in Urbana parks. Having input from BPAC would be amazing in my research." So I would entertain a motion for this appointment.
I guess I will move approval of Keenan Portis to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, BPAC, term ending in June 30th, 2026.
Is there a second?
A second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before the council, this meeting is adjourned.